last August called Vino, so it's Prosecco style inspired. What does it mean? So first of all, it's made with a local grape variety called Guruk, which translates as foxtail, and I'll go into depth more on that in one of the following lines. But long story short, the only place in the world where you can find the only rootstock of this variety is in our winery. Not just in Ukraine, just at SHABO winery. Second of all, it has lower pressure, 3 bars instead of traditional 6, so that might be the cause of that, or I'm going to use it as an excuse. And the third one is slightly lower alcohol, it's about 10.5 to 11 degrees of alcohol. So it's going to be very fresh, very crisp, but because it's done with this more lighter style, much more well-pronounced peach, apricot, a bit of acacia flower notes on it as well. So this is an extremely good option for like a daily friendly sparkling wine. Also can be a good potential for cocktail bases like your Aperol Spryt, for example. So this is a universal proposition. And very beautiful fine bubbles. It doesn't want to rip your face apart.
And now, as we enjoy our bubbles, I'll give you how we got here to Ukrainian wine. Some have heard this before, but we'll get a better description of the wines from Giorgi than I'm capable of. So I'm Sam, and forgive me for things I might not know. I will punt questions to Giorgi, but I've only been doing this for a couple of years now, and only actually selling wine for a few months. I don't come from the industry. I have no background in this whatsoever. I was born in DC. I grew up in Bethesda, Maryland, and I joined the military when I was 17 years old. Enlisted end of 2004, beginning of 2005. Not that long after 9/11, and served in the military for 12 years. Served in Afghanistan, did Katrina, Rita. Wound up getting hurt and not being able to deploy anymore, so I got out and went into the defense industry. And because of the unique things I did in the defense industry, namely working at a very high level doing night vision and communications and survivability, armor, ground mobility, weapons systems, etc., for U.S. conventional and special operations forces. When Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, with a full-scale invasion, I got a phone call from some friends in the special operations community, retired out of special forces, and said, hey, the government's not doing anything. They pulled everybody out of the embassy. We're putting together a team of advisors to go advise the Ukrainian government on health, and they're asking for a weapons and equipment procurement and acquisition specialist. You leave on Saturday, no pay, no insurance, no backing, but this NGO will pay your airfare. Do you want to come? So I went and talked to my wife, and I packed up my body armor and chemical gear and medical equipment and about $8,000 in cash, and got on a plane to Poland, joined up with the team, and went overland into Ukraine about week 5 of the invasion, and wound up living in a Ukrainian safe house with 3 cell phones, a laptop, some wine and vodka, and an AK-74 in case the Russians kick the door in. I was embedded in a team of Ukrainian procurement specialists and military operatives, and wound up immediately falling in love with the country, the people, the mission, the fight, and the wine and spirits. It was supposed to be about a week-long mission, and it got to that point, had all the meetings we were supposed to have. Everybody said, all right, saddle up, we're going back to Poland. And I went, no, I think I'm staying. I felt like everything in my life had driven me to that point, prepared me for that. It was the most important thing I'd ever gotten to do. So I wound up staying and getting more and more into Ukrainian culture, Ukrainian history, and including being bribed to buy illegally Ukrainian wine and spirits because all alcohol sales were banned in the country at the time, and learning about them while living in the safe house. Eventually I came back to the US. I kept volunteering from the US for another 4 months or so. About the first 5 months of the invasion, before my wife said, hey, you have to get a real job again with actual income, because we have small children, something like that. So I tried to create a new job. I created a new job for myself in the defense industry that would allow me to go work the war effort full time and go back to Ukraine and continue doing it. But I had a problem. I kept going back and forth between the U.S. and Ukraine, and I couldn't get the Ukrainian wines and spirits that I'd fallen in love with in Ukraine in the United States at all. They did not exist on the U.S. market. So I did what any self-respecting American combat vet would do in that situation. I started bootlegging. And packing up suitcases of wine and spirits to bring back for my family and friends. But as 2022 rolled on, I had two problems that got worse as time went on. One was that the demand from my family and friends and myself kept increasing. And second, I started getting caught by Polish customs. Because I would not break any US laws. I would declare everything adults, but you can only bring 1 liter of alcohol into the EU. So I would have to sneak the booze into the EU to fly, because you can't fly out of Ukraine. And that led to some really interesting interactions I can get into later. But by the beginning of 2023, I decided to start a company to bring the best of Ukraine to the United States and show America something about Ukraine other than the war, and give people something to index off of mentally that was not the fighting they saw going on TV all the time, airstrikes, things like that, and show off the beauty and history and traditions of the country. To do this, I partnered with 2 other veterans, one Ukrainian, one American, a retired U.S. Marine Corps officer I worked with in the defense industry who came to Ukraine with me for the first time after I proposed the project, and a Ukrainian veteran who I lived in the safe house with and taught me a lot about Ukraine at the beginning. Both serial entrepreneurs with extensive business experience. We wanted to keep the focus on the mission as well, so we partnered with teams of American bomb technicians, explosive ordnance disposal, and combat engineer veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan, who go over to Ukraine as volunteers and go to liberated towns that are by Russian landmines behind, and they dig up and disarm Russian landmines. And we started working with them to use our wine and vodka sales to fund their needs in real time. So that's SYPRT Worldwide, our import company, and we only import Ukrainian wine and spirits. As we set up that venture, which took about 2 years to set up before we started shipping, about 14 weeks ago in the US, I met Giorgi in the summer of 2023 and started learning about SHABO, Ukraine's most prestigious, internationally recognized, oldest and largest winery. And with that, I introduce Giorgi.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for the wonderful host, for having us, for you for coming and spending the most valuable what you have, your time, to listen to our story, to our mission. Before I go into my presentation, like we're having now a nice aperitif, let's have a 1-minute video aperitif, so we have at least some visual cues for SHABO.
This is the PDF, so the video.
No.
It is working.
That's an interesting video.
Are we allowed to ask a question?
Yes,
What's the
please.
mask?
The mask was created by our art director that tells 4 different varieties and 4 different seasons of the year. So it's an installation by Odessa sculptor inside of a 200-year-old cellar.
Interesting. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, And actually on one of the highest end collections of SHABO wines. When you get outside of the normal wines into the family collection, hundreds of dollars a bottle, that face, that mask is part of the label.
Yeah. So this is, for example, our entrance to the museum, and here is the 200-year-old cellar. I mean, there's one as well there as well. That's the king cellar, where the king of Romania has his own signature in the cement. And this is where the mask is. So, thank you again. So, yes, my name is Giorgi Iukuridze. I'm the next generation of winemakers from SHABO. Today I'm going to tell you our history, where we're coming from, and where we want to get to. And we are wonderful help with Sam and the whole team of SYPRT Worldwide and the City Vino team. I'm sure we're going to achieve those goals that we have set up for ourselves. So, to know where we want to get to, I think it's important to know where we're coming from. So, I'm going to be very brief, just 90 seconds at most of history lesson. I'm not going to bore you with lecture, and please feel free to interrupt me at any point, ask questions or speak your mind. So, not many people know, but Ukraine has been making wine 300 years longer than France has, so for nearly 2,800 years. First being the ancient Greeks that started winemaking in southern region of Ukraine, specifically where SHABO is today. Next big stage that not many people associate with was during the Ottoman Empire rule, that during 15th century and for the next 300 years, they ruled pretty much everything in the region. But not many people know they were not only drinking wine quite well, but they were also making it as well. So they were the first ones to give the name of modern day SHABO. They called that village, in Turkish, they call it Aşağıbag, which roughly translates as lower gardens, for two reasons. One, we're on the sea level. Second, there is a very important historical fortress, a castle, Lerman Castle, which is slightly higher than our vineyard, so there's also another possibility why it's lower gardens. And then, last bit but important part of history that has never repeated itself was that the winemakers from Switzerland, out of all places, came with a research trip to modern day lands where SHABO is today, made their research, and they fell in love with the quality of the region so much that they actually moved there. 80 people of Swiss winemaking families created the first and only fully autonomous Swiss winemaking colony in the world. They had their own police, they had their own schools, they spoke 5 languages, they had their own Protestant church in the middle of the village. So, and I quote, the last phrase of their research analysis before they decided to move it was, "This place is the heaven on earth for winemaking." Now, as you can imagine, Aşağıbag was a bit of a mouthful to pronounce for the francophone Swiss, so with time, it went through the process of evolution from Aşağıbag, Shabag, SHABO. So that's where the name comes, and that's why it has quite a French ring to it. By 1847, so which is a very short time for winemaking, the wines were already receiving international awards and recognition in Europe, so SHABO brand has already started to become well known around the world. And then obviously when the Soviets came, most of the Swiss winemakers had to immigrate back to Switzerland. Not all of them were so lucky, unfortunately. Some ended up in Soviet gulags. And then during the Soviet period, there were a couple of different priorities. It was all about the quantity, less so about quality. And in the 90s, with the fall of the Soviet Union, the winery was in complete ruins. It was not producing any wines under their own label. They were mainly selling wine in bulk to other wineries. And in 2003, the winery came up for privatization. And that's where my family moved into this project. So, a few words about my family. We originally come from Georgia. Some of you might know Georgia is often referred to as the cradle of winemaking. by UNESCO, it's proven that on the modern day territory of Georgia, the oldest artifacts of winemaking were found and are dated 8,000 years. So Georgia is often referred to as the country of 8,000 vintages. For us as Georgians, which we have wine instead of blood running in our veins, it was surprising why there is no high-end, top-shelf winemaking in Ukraine, because there's everything for it. Incredible terroir, soil, the climate, the people, everything was so. With that goal in mind, my father went into this project. Before that, he was working as a hiring manager at other wineries. All of this was completely bought on personal and bank loans that we service to this day. So for you to understand, this is the state that my father saw the potential in it. I still remember when he took me as a kid, they're like, this is not what we're gonna do. I'm like, seriously?
This was still making wine. This is what the Soviets had done. Now, the Soviets occupied Odessa starting in 1940 during World War II, right? So SHABO had a 120-year history of greatness before that. They won the first international wine awards at SHABO in 1847, right? And the Soviets practically erased that 120-year history of international wine greatness. As wine was beginning to proliferate throughout the world through easier international trade of wine. That's why we don't know about Ukrainian winemaking, despite how old it is, because as wine was finally possible to get to places like the US from Eastern Europe, the Iron Curtain slammed down, and it became impossible to get it, and then the Soviets ran it into the ground. At which point, Giorgi's family did.
So my father, if I may say so, saw the same potential as the Swiss did. Because for a winemaker, second to his guests, the most valuable what he has are the vineyards. Is the terroir. It's what makes your winery special. That's why you can be driving on a 2-lane road in Bordeaux. But for some reason, this winemaker makes wine that sells for 15 euros. You really cross 20 meters and this wine costs 5,000 euros. Because those 10 meters make the world of difference. So that's what most valuable we have. So how did we get from here to here? I'm going to tell you the story. Are we? I think we're already on the next one. Okay, so before we move into the next stages, a few words about the original collection rosé that we were having, which during my last visit I received a lot of questions like, what is your favorite wine? It really depends on the mood and the food I'm having, but at that point it was the rosé, this very rosé, and because of that, unfortunately, we were running extremely low in May that we had to make an emergency delivery by air freight to USA, so it went very well. So this is one of our top sales. So this is an original collection rosé made with a blend of Pinot Noir and Merlot. In this instance, this is a stainless steel fermentation, but there is a key difference between 95% of other rosés you're going to be having elsewhere, is that this one is made by a free-run juice. It's gravity fed. In other words, we do not use any mechanical presses. The grape is crushed under its own weight. So the free-flow juice, what it does in return is to keep its beautiful fruit-forward flavors and aromas. It helps to preserve that uniqueness that we value so much in rosé. So this one will be an extremely beautiful mouthfeel with a very subtle. For me, I always say this like dunking your head in a basket of raspberries. Just that raspberries, strawberries. I also forget the name for little strawberries. I don't know how it's called in English. I'll Google it after. But very elegant, very subtle, incredibly beautiful acidity. It's not very soft. And for me, it's one of like the best daily drivers with or without food.
Works really well with this thing.
For some reason, it says also strawberries, but Probably there are much smaller ones, but a more concentrated flavor.
Like your yard strawberries. Yeah.
All good? Moving forward?
Absolutely.
I'm still digging the rosé. I don't know about you guys.
Our approach, we are OCD in terms of when it comes to winemaking. So excellence in everything we do. So we built our world on, let's say, the so-called 3 elephants that holds our principles. And first of all, the motto of my family is wine is culture. And it doesn't limit itself to just the winemaking process. And every single aspect of your life, because wine is really where you're born, wine is really where you pass away, and everything you do as well. So whether it's how you make your wine, how you run your business, how you pay your taxes, how you treat your colleagues at work, how you celebrate your occasions, how you drink responsibly. So in every single aspect, wine is there at any given point of your life. So with this in mind, the 3 elephants we built is the viticulture, so work in the vineyards, the winemaking, what happens at the winery, and also very important, because wine can bring a lot of happiness, but also can bring a lot of sadness due to the lack of knowledge of how to drink it, how to consume it, how to do it correctly and responsibly. So we covered all of those 3 grounds, and then now we're going to go a bit more in detail to every single stage. Again, please interrupt, ask questions. I don't want this to be an academic lecture. That's why I'm going to ask maybe for a glass of rosé if I can. To the viticulture. Most important that we have are our terroir and our vines. So, thank you very much. So, what is terroir and what is this French word? Thank you very much. That we've been hearing so much. So, terroir, because my first degree was in mathematics, I often refer to it as the mathematics formula for wine, which consists of elevation, how many millimeters of rain you get per year, soil composition, number of sunny days. So all of these elements, your geographical location to begin with, the latitude and longitude, all of these factors make this formula that ends up in your terroir and what makes your wines unique. So when we talk about SHABO, first of all, the biggest misconception is that Ukraine is very cold. Not so much, because we're actually located on the very same so-called wine latitude as Burgundy, 46.7. Furthermore, we have...
And Northern Italy.
Yeah. Furthermore, we have much softer climate. It's 300 days of sun. We're actually located on a sandy island on the coast of the Black Sea. And on the other side, we have a freshwater estuary. So, for example, as some of you might know, last 10-15 years, all of Europe, winemaking Europe, is suffering from droughts very, very heavily, and that really affects the quality. Thanks to the Swiss that saw the potential so far ahead, because we have 2 bodies of water surrounding our vineyards, we have a good moisture that comes from under the earth. So, in our case, our situation is better, still very, very good.
And one thing to note about that, because of the Black Sea exposure right up against the vineyard, you can notice a little hint of salinity in some of the minerality throughout pretty much the whole SHABO collection. It's sort of it's a unique little feel.
Absolutely.
Are you using water to irrigate or not?
So, very good question. Do you know appellation? So, for example, in France, you have appellation, the Grand Cru, the Premier Grand Cru, plus the Village, etc. So, if you want to have this appellation, which is essentially just a stamp of the quality and the way you make your wine, you're prohibited to have irrigation. And we're the first and only winery in Ukraine that has appellation. We received it, the local one, in 2012. which is surprisingly more harder and tougher than the French one. Long story short, for the duration of about 6 years, give or take, you have unannounced visitors from government representatives and control quality on every single stage of winemaking, from the vineyard to the finished product in the bottle from the shelf in the shop. If during those 6 years, I think it's 7 to be honest, but give or take 6, if you keep the same level of quality all through the year, meaning high quality, then you get this appellation. So we're still the only winery in Ukraine that has it. And furthermore, we received the PGI and PDO, Protected Geographical Index and Protected Designation of Origin for our wineries, which is an international classification system, a couple of years ago, just before the war. Going into more depth into our vineyards, this is our unique variety. People are getting bored with your Cabernet Chardonnay, so it's sometimes people want something unique, something local, something special. So in our portfolio, Telti Group is definitely it.
And you're going to have two different Telti Kuroks tonight. So pay attention to this. This is sort of the flagship grape of SHABO, and what we're referring to, if you're familiar with noble grapes, Chardonnay, Cabernet, Merlot, this is the noble grape of Ukraine. It is completely indigenous to Ukraine. The only place it grows in the world is on the shore of the Black Sea, south of Odessa, in the sand. And the only original rootstock, not spliced, not grafted, of this wine, of this grape left in the world, is at SHABO. So you're some of the first Americans to get to try a wine that is almost totally unknown in the United States.
They're members of a very exclusive club.
We've met with masters of wine and masters of the court of sommeliers, who we put it in front of, and they go, "What the hell is that?"
But in a good way,
We
right?
can list off hundreds of grapes on the tip of their tongues, and they've never heard it. And then they try it, and we'll see what you think. This is Telti Kurok being poured now. This one is a reserve collection Telti Kurok, which is where Telti Kurok starts in the SHABO collections. The SHABO collections go original, reserve, some limited edition wines that where experiments happen, and clever winemaking and things like that, and then grand reserve. You're going to have all of those, all 4 of those tonight, and then often some really crazy stuff above that. But the Telti Kurok starts in the reserve collection, doesn't exist in the original. And this is the grape in its purest form. No, this is stainless steel, no aging, just to give you an idea of what the grape is like by itself without any modification, oak, or aging, to give you a baseline. You'll try another one later. Interestingly, you already have one. This is your second Telti Kurok, actually, because that Primo Secco, sparkling at the beginning, was also made from Telti Kurok. That's the first sparkling made from it.
And while we're still on the topic of Primo Secco, that I also skipped, after we launched the sparkling wine last August, we actually sent a few samples to the biggest sparkling wine competition in the world that happens in France. It's called FX7 Monde, the sparklings of the world. So out of over 2,000 samples, most of them being predominantly obviously French, we actually came in top 10 of the best sparklings in the world with the Primo Secco.
Congratulations.
I didn't do anything.
Everything else in the top 10 was French, Champenois method instead of Charmat, and about $100. So I would mention there were some hurt feelings when the results were released, and one of them was a $15 on the shelf.
Yeah, it was like a sea of French flags and glitter on Ukrainian. So yeah, talking about the people while on the topic, I'm just covering the ground. You said so. What makes this wine unique, apart from it being the only rootstock being SHABO. This is for wine geeks and wine lovers out there. This is also the pre-phylloxera variety. Phylloxera was a terrible disease in the early 20th century that destroyed all the vineyards in Europe. Essentially, it was like a small bug that ate the rootstock and the leaves in the grapes essentially. So the group was growing and still is almost exclusively on sand. And because of that, this bug would climb its way up. So Celtic group is also a member of a very rare club of what is called a pre-phylloxera variety. So essentially, we're able to try the original grapes that were like our ancestors used to bring 10, 15 generations ago. So it's not modified, it's not grafted, it's original.
And specifically, SHABO has been growing Celtic for its entire 203-year history. So this is the same wine that was grown by the Swiss in 1822.
And first planted by the Turkish in the 15th century, by the Ottoman Empire. So in terms of flavor and taste profile, so Celtic is definitely something I would say gastronomic wine. The food pairing is the superpower of this wine. It goes with pretty much everything from your cheese, goat cheese salad, seafood, fish, all the way to beef tartare, if you ask me. So it's really super powerful, this wine. With the palate, you have very beautiful, crisp notes, strong minerality. You have rhubarb, lilac, linden, a bit of floral, again, a bit of white acacia, and as Sam said, due to the proximity to the Black Sea, it has very pronounced, in a good way, minerality, which excellent. You can almost taste the Black Sea, the sea salt in it. And a touch of sweetness in the aftertaste, at the very end. And again, beautifully structured, beautiful minerality, all balanced, and this is, let's say, the main style of SHABO wines is all about balance. There is no sharp acidity, there is no uncontrolled alcohol, it's all works in unity.
I think this was the first wine picked up here at City Vino. And if you're members of the wine club here, this is in the wine club wines this month.
A bit of lemongrass as well, some citrus notes. And a beautiful, beautiful mouth. So, this first indigo you're trying is actually just stainless steel fermentation and straight to the bottle. So you can taste the pure varietal. The next one we're going to be trying is the opposite in technique, but more on that later.
Yes.
So,
Any questions on Celtic Cook? Any thoughts? Any? Yes.
This is like a unique, specific varietal to the Ukrainian region that's like
Yes.
forever. And you won't see this type of grape anywhere else.
Nowhere else in the world, and the only original, genetically original, pure form of this grape is at this wine. Doesn't exist anywhere else in the world.
Would you be willing to send clippings here to the United States to start planting, or like?
sure, it would be an interesting experiment to see.
That would be interesting. Virginia Celtic Cook.
So you're pushing Sam now from being an importer, like in the next 5 years he's going to become a winemaker. Well, the philosophy of our family that in winemaking you don't have competitors. It's all colleagues, because we have, all of us are a little cuckoo to go into this.
No, actually, that's 100% true. So we are expanding our wines that we're bringing in from Ukraine. And guess who our #1 consultant to help us know who to work with is? Right? No, seriously. So back to the story a little bit, and the interesting how Giorgi and I met was through another Ukrainian winemaker. Because I went with my partners, to visit some wineries. We found one we absolutely love, called Father's Wine, in a town called Chernobyl in central western Ukraine. And we spent the day, very drunk, on their wines. Really, the wheels fell off about that. But it was, we briefed them on what we wanted to do in bringing Ukrainian wine to America. And they said, "That's awesome. Did you see how small our winery is?" They said, "America is really big." this with you, but we can't do it at the scale you're talking. So, you need to meet SHABO. And my reaction may have been, what's a SHABO? Then I later realized I'd already had their wine. But I didn't know the names of wineries yet, I was just getting into this. And so Oksana, the head of Father's Wine, took me out to dinner with Giorgi, and we got to know each other. And that's the kind of familial and collegial environment there is in Ukrainian winemaking. It is not the sort of backstabby, like punch and fight culture of the competition. It is very collegial. And we actually had a call yesterday morning with another winery that we're going to bring on, with Giorgi on the call. He made an introduction to us of a winery in the mountains of western Ukraine that Giorgi holds in high esteem. So it really is a family affair of winemaking and of importing this project to bring Ukrainian wine to the U.S., where we can build out a Ukrainian wine section in wine stores across the country.
Because honestly, I recommend the wineries that are cuckoo for winemaking, because the best comment I ever received from all the guests who had at our winery is that it was like an anonymous comment on TripAdvisor. It said, I don't know who the owners of this winery are, but they're one motherfuckers. to do this much, get one winery. And the one wineries I recommend is for the people that I know that live for the wine and the grape. Because honestly, my family has been doing this for around the third generation to do it commercially, and we have 7 generations before that just to do for themselves. If you want to do business and make big money, don't go into the winemaking. Go into distillates, go into something stronger.
And so to get into that, to preface this, you're going to see a lot of crazy equipment and see the $115 million that Giorgi's family has put into this. And how far that money goes to Ukraine, that's like if you see an American winery that somebody's put $400 million into. Okay? And people, one of the questions we often get is, how do they put that much money into it? And the answer is what Giorgi just said, distilling. And we won't get into these products that much, but SHABO is also the #1 brandy producer in Ukraine, which is a brandy producing country, or a brandy drinking country. And SHABO produces 35% of all of the brandy consumed in Ukraine, which equals about 1 million bottles sold per month domestically.
Even now with the war.
Right. And so that translates, that is the cash cow, and the money from that is taken and put into the passion project of having one of the craziest wineries on earth.
Absolutely. So, if no comments, we're going. Yes, sir.
Sorry, this is one question. Where is SHABO located in Ukraine? Like, you said the Talty Frozen sand.
So SHABO is right here, south of Odessa, on the coast of the Black Sea, right near
coastal. It's coastal?
Yeah, this is the Black Sea right here.
If I can take your couple of. There you go.
I understand. See, I was just confirming because you said sand, so I'm like, where is there sand?
Yeah,
So
so,
this is the.
oh yeah, show the map of where the water is, and we can pass this book around if folks want to take a look.
Magnified version of it. Yeah, so it's literally on the coast.
I'm telling you, like, these pictures do not do it justice. People ask, does it really look like that? And the answer is no, it's much crazier than the pictures you convey. It is.
So yeah, this is the location of SHABO. So this is the magnified version. So highlighted in green are the vineyards and the village of SHABO. So this is the Black Sea, and this is the freshwater ratio. So literally all the vineyards are right on the coast.
So to give you an idea, this patch right here is the town of SHABO. So the vineyard is several times the size of the town. Okay.
It's 3,300 acres.
Yeah. Of grapes.
In Ukraine, you're not allowed to purchase agricultural land. It's a long-term lease rent.
Yeah.
So they're under your control.
I mean,
Yes.
you don't buy grapes.
No, it's all the state.
So the land can be only rented, what is on the land is your private property, but you can rent it, they're changing a law and launch.
You asked me if it was a state grapes or if you buy grapes.
No, we only use our own. That's the way we can only control the quality.
4 million vines,
How many?
3,300 acres. And 3 campuses of buildings, each about 15 minutes apart, 50 acres of buildings. That's the Viticulture Center, the House of Sparkling Wine, the Wine Culture Center, the Wine Museum, the still wine production facilities. So it is.
Quit talking, start drinking.
Thank you, Rita. It really is an unbelievable breadth of the facility. A basic tour takes 4 hours. You know, you go to a wine tour at most places it's 20 minutes or something, and then you go to the tasting rooms. 4 hours for the basic tour. An industry level tour. Yeah, I mean, I learn more every time I go, and with tasting, we probably spend 10 hours a day.
Yeah, easy. So, the next one we're trying is our Reserve Collection Chardonnay from 2022. So again, from Reserve Collection, what it means. It comes from a different parcel of the vineyard because wine is born in the vineyard. It has lesser yield, we leave lesser yield per each vine, so whatever grape remains is much more concentrated and has more flavor and has more minerals and in turn gives better wine. So hand-picked, transported to the winery, we, in this case of the Reserve Chardonnay, it's stainless steel fermentation, but we do oak it for up to 6 months in the 2nd and 3rd-year-old barrels. Why for 6 months and why not new? Because we don't want to be Californian. So it's, all jokes aside, I love Californian reds, it's one of my soft spots, but for our style, we find that it's much better to use oak very sparingly, so it's integrated into the wine and not overpowering it. So we want you to try the Ukrainian terroir and less so the French barrel producers.
Though even when you get into some of the higher collections, you'll have a first-year oak with longer aging, but still, just in advance of trying that, notice how delicately and gently that's integrated, despite that.
Yeah. So here you can taste, again, beautiful mouthfeel, very subtle, freshly cut grass. You have very typical Chardonnay. You have some exotic fruits, maybe of like mango and papaya, in the later to the end of the aftertaste, and then the aftertaste. This is something we always fight for because we don't like our wines short. When you drink like water, you forget about it. We like it to linger with you, to stay with you, to be a pleasant thought that stays with you. So this long-lasting aftertaste is also a big part of our style. And again, as I mentioned in the beginning, all of our wines can be defined probably with one word, and that word for me would be equilibrium. So it's, again, nothing is here that's not supposed to be there. So if no questions on Chardonnay?
Nope.
Okay. So team and technology. So I couldn't do anything that we are doing without the team that works at the winery. We have almost 1,200 people working full-time at our company, at our winery. But even still, we know that it's no what we call a one-man orchestra. You still have to listen and hear and always develop. You never should be still. Status quo kills the wine. So for this reason, we work with Stefan Derenoncourt, who is one of the persons who created the profession of the so-called flying winemaker, i.e. the wine consultant. He's the student of Michel Roland, who invented this profession. profession in the 70s. So with Stefan, we've been working from 2010, 11, give or take. Long story short, why? Because before we tried many different consultants, Australia, Georgia, Italy, France, but from other part. But why we knew that we would find a common language with Stefan, because the first time he came to Odessa, to SHABO, I picked him up at the airport, we're driving to the winery, and just about to enter the winery itself. And Stefan stops, he's like, I have nothing to do here. I was, excuse me? He said, take me to the vineyards, that's where the wine is made. So that's from that moment on, I knew that we'll make something special together. And the next wine we're going to be trying are one of the concepts that we created together with Stefan was that already that super high collections of our wines. So this is just to give you a small example of our OCD level of perfectionism and irresponsible spending. So this is our fine wine section. So this building works at most 3 months out of a year, only for high range red wines, and literally for one single stage of winemaking process of fermentation. That's when the wines, we call the grape berries here. These are French-made oak vats of Taransaud. Vats is the term for meaning just giant barrel, which each of them is 5,000 liter barrel. With temperature control, we do the fermentation on scale. We still have some wines to try, we're going to get here, but this is for you to just understand. So this book alone, for a single stage, for essentially 2 collections of red wines, itself cost $5 million. Just for one process.
It's a lot of
And not for all the collection, just for the top ones.
That's a lot of brandy being sold.
Yeah, exactly. So moving forward to other techniques, because again, this barrel fermented wine is definitely not common. It's on the rare side because we love our experiments. We love to try something new. So I'm originally from Georgia, and there's this technique that is one of the oldest techniques of winemaking in the world, which is called kvevri. Kvevri from Georgian translates as clay amphora.
Is anyone familiar with this? Have camphor wines before?
So this is how they look during transportation. Actually, after they've been delivered, they are turned vertically and buried the neck deep underground because they keep the same temperature and humidity all through the year. You put the whole grape bunch inside. I think we're going to have one of those wines today.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so I'm going to go more into detail when we're having that wine specifically. This number can be updated because last year, even with war going on, I brought 9 more from Georgia to Ukraine and installed them. So this is one of the...
And those have to travel by truck, right?
Through Turkey, through
All the way around
Bulgaria,
from Turkey,
Bulgaria.
around the Black Sea.
As Sam mentioned before, we have several campuses in our village. So this is our house of sparkling wine. So this is where the Charmat method, Primo Secco, one of them that you tried, is being made. That's also where we have our...
Let's go back to the facade real quick for a moment.
Sure.
This, Ukraine has had castles built for hundreds of years, all the way up to the 1700s. A castle from the 1700s that collapsed in the western city of Lviv was just complete ruins. There was nothing left of the castle. The bricks had fallen down and everything. SHABO bought the remnants that had fallen down and built this house of sparkling wine from the castle bricks as an homage to the history and traditions of Ukraine and its winemaking. And then, as you can see, everything in SHABO is a combination of traditions, history, and heritage, along with the most modern techniques and technology. Anybody guess what's right here in the middle of it?
That mask.
So one of those wine.
No, it's not really highlighted here
Barely.
because it's covered by the shadow. It's
That's why I asked.
an old school watch clock.
Yeah, it's a analog clock face that is run by an atomic clock, one of the only ones in
That's awesome.
So it actually shows better time than your iPhone. So, it's so yeah, this is the mix that we're going for. So yeah, traditions and innovation, slightly overused, but we live by it. So we, apart from the Charmat method, we also have the traditional Champenois method, classical method. Anywhere from 1 year on lease to the oldest one we have at the moment will be 18 years old and still on lease and still getting better.
Wow. And for example, one that we're actively distributing in Virginia right now, the highest of the Champenois is a Grand Reserve, right here, Grand Reserve Sparkling. That is a Champenois that's 2016, 100% 2016, single vintage, single varietal, 2016, 100% Chardonnay. Bottled in 2016, degorgeage done in December of 2024. So 8 years in the bottle on wines. And from City Vino, that's what, $65?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, for the same money, you get basic French Moët Chandon.
And people have special ordered some of those here, and they're available through Vino. But yeah, they actually everything from SHABO is available. So, but yeah, it runs the gamut.
So, apart from wine, we also want to expand the big SHABO family and to provide better services for our clients to be involved.
Let's jump into Grand Reserve Healthy Cook. So now we're getting into the Grand Reserve level. What you've had is original and reserve. Grand Reserve, and you saw that facility for the reds, same level of OCD for the whites, but we're going to talk through a little bit of how this is done. So this is all the previous ones, hand-picked, go into small boxes so that the grapes don't crush each other for transit to the winery. Some of them are in refrigerator trucks, the reserve collection. This is picked at dawn to control perfect amount of residual sunlight exposure to prevent artificial sugar from forming in any uncontrolled manner in the grapes. It goes in a refrigerated truck in those small boxes back for the 15 to 30 minute drive to the winery. Comes out of that, goes onto sorting tables for 5 rounds of hand selection of bunches on stem separation vibratory tables before going into a machine from Boucher Vastin, which is the Rolls Royce of Swiss winemaking equipment, that separates the grapes and measures every single one by laser and optical sensor for size, shape, and weight. So every single grape going into any Grand Reserve collection wine has gone through that $1 million Swiss machine that's present at less than 30 wineries in the world. After that, all the Grand Reserve wines, whether they're in the 5,000 liter Tarnsado tanks, vats, or in 228 liter or 500 liter barrels, is fermented in French oak before going and being separated and moved to usually a mix of new first year French oak and second year French oak for, in this case, 10 months of aging before being bottled, and then every single bottle is numbered uniquely for that year's harvest.
Absolutely. We're looking at, depending on the wine, on the variety, it's for Grand Reserve, it's 5, maximum maybe 7,000 bottles per hour.
So if you taste this and notice how different this is, same thing, 100% Celtic Coro, but a completely different process than the one you tried earlier. Yes, sir.
I love Eastern European wines. Croatia has been my favorite Eastern European wine region forever. There is a Greek wine called a Syrtiko that this vaguely reminds me of, that I will tell you right now that a Syrtiko used to be my favorite Eastern European white wine. It has since recently been replaced, like within the past 5 minutes. And I think we need a new term because OCD just does not cover what you guys do. OCD is low level compared to what you guys do. You're up here somewhere. So. This is delicious, so thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So this wine has an extra layer of complexity. The barrel, first you can see already, it's, and the barrel fermentation, because this wines do ferment in small sized barrels of 228 liter burgundy size. It changes the mouthfeel. It's might become much more silky, more velvety, much more supple as well.
This is also the first Ukrainian wine to be featured in Michelin-starred restaurants in London, two in Paris, one in London, several years ago. And this is a wine that is currently sold and exhibited at the Bordeaux Wine Museum, the Cité du Vin in Bordeaux, as a representation of the greatness of Ukrainian wine.
That museum only selects one winery from each country to be present in that museum, and for the last 14 years it's SHABO. And well, from the day one since the museum opened.
And there are 2 wines from SHABO represented in that museum, the 2 wines from Ukraine, and you're going to try them both tonight. This is the first one.
Any questions, thoughts on Grand Reserve and the group? Then moving forward, so as I mentioned, we try to offer more and more services and develop further our communities.
It's very labor intensive, you know?
Very
labor intensive.
Oh, absolutely.
Everything you're doing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why one of the most important factors is the team you're working with, because if they're not as crazy about wine, committed about it, you're not going to get any results.
Is there something like a spectrometer or something that $1 million?
That one comes on a later stage after the wine is harvested. That's part of it. But thank you for the question, because yes, you're completely right. Usually, when you decide when your grapes are ready for the harvest, you use what is called refractometer, which is essentially like an apparatus where you put a few drops of grape juice from the berry and lets you see what is the sugar content. If it's ripe enough or not. But that's outdated, to put it mildly. Nobody, unfortunately, like 85–90% of the wineries around the world still don't just buy this. While we developed our own system that uses the best and the most detailed computer in the world, human's tongue. No computer will ever come close to it. So you literally 1 month before the harvest have to go out into the winery. Doesn't matter how big it is. So essentially, I pick one row. I start in the beginning, middle, and end. And every single one, I have to be systematic, so it's going to be like a proper analysis. So I take a berry, I chew it 10 times on this side, 10 times on this side. From that, I need to evaluate the acidity, the sugar, the thickness of the skin, how easily the pulp comes out from the grape. Also, I need to see the color. Has the seed already changed the color to fully brown, or still has some green on it? Also a big factor. So all of these factors combined make me realize that if it's ready to harvest or not, find the optimal date. Now, I have to do this in the beginning, the start, and the end of every row, and every 5 rows over. In our size of wineries, honestly, me personally, I did it twice. I can't remember when it was, I think last time was maybe 9 years ago. Long story short, I still cannot eat grapes to this very day. Thankfully, I can drink wine, but I cannot go get the grapes anymore. Yes.
So you guys have all this acreage, and you're like, let's say you're growing so much of Celtic Keurig specifically. You're saying even within that one harvest, of like there'll be variety even amongst like.
Absolutely, yeah. Even in one parcel, maybe that is exactly maybe too big, it can give different quality of wine. So in the process, our winemakers or myself, okay, we can see the change coming and we say, okay, this one, for example, will go through the reserve collection, but this one is for Grand Reserve. So it's
And this crap over here is brand new.
yeah.
Even though they're all treated the same, though, they're like they're all getting the same amount of like water, nutrient. Like you're not like experimenting. You're like
Oh no, we do experiment a lot.
Okay.
Thankfully, we have the acreage for it to play around with. And
The number of winemaking experiments they're running at any given time is staggering.
yeah, we still do a lot.
Where does this live now?
Winemaking experiments where they're trying out new things, new combinations. SHABO was the first winery in the world to make a Saperavi Merlot Cabernet blend.
Yeah. For example, now, like in the Georgian amphoras, I'm trying Pinot Noir from my other side, from distillates. I'm testing now to make. It already exists in a few parts of the world, but I'm not satisfied with the quality. I'm trying to make a gin that's made from grape spirit. So this is also like just to highlight some of the experiments that are going on right
We
now.
haven't imported it yet, but I have a bottle of Grand Reserve at home. Chardonnay Sauvignon Blanc.
Blend.
Yeah, blend, right? And I'm gonna crack that open with my dad sometime in the next few weeks and, yeah.
There was also another experiment of 3-in-1 blend of Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, and Pinot Grigio all in one as well.
The last time Sam was here, we were contemplating a single varietal Viognier. You said that, Sam was saying that you were doing blends with the Viognier, but here in Virginia, we know the grape. It would be interesting to see,
There's a lot of them being grown.
Yeah, oh good, that is interesting.
it would be interesting to see a single varietal Viognier from you.
I'm not gonna share all my secrets what's in my mind. I'm gonna keep you guessing, but I'll duly note it.
Okay.
So, briefly on the individual wine cellars. So, apart from Grand Reserve, there is also what we call a family collection, which are the wines that my father from the beginning saw, which is first mission to create the best of the best wines, not just for Ukraine, but in his vision of the world. So these wines we make only on top vintages, which will have the highest potential for bottle aging, meaning that we'll go through the process of evolution in the bottle and not stay the same. So for people who buy those family collections, we offer individual wine cellars, which looks like a small bank vault, anywhere from 17 to 72 bottles, depending on what your desires are. Minimum purchase time is for 10 years. What's included? So, ideal conditions for storage of your wine. But more importantly, every year, every February or March, we taste those family collection wines from our stock and give you a report and analysis saying, okay, it's still developing, it's still getting better and better, or okay, you should drink it now, or it's becoming vinegar. This is one of the, let's say, extra steps that we offer.
And up until now, while SHABO is exported to 30 countries around the world, the U.S. was the 27th country SHABO came to. And if you're interested, we can share the story of that, why that is later. But the family collection has only been available at the vineyard. You have to go to Ukraine, go to SHABO, and buy the family collection.
And also only with the green light from Vino for my father.
Oh, and only, yeah, oh, yeah. And
If you want to spend 500 euros, you have to be sure about it.
Right. So Giorgi has been kind enough to allow us to authorize select accounts in the United States to be able to order the family collection. And so we're building out sort of our reference points of who we're okay with that with, and Rita is that for Fredericksburg. So, and she didn't know that until right now. If you have clientele that are interested in that, you know, and I will bring some down for you to taste some. You have not tasted them with me.
No, I haven't, no.
I will bring some down for you to taste.
Special one for the members.
I hesitate to even bring this up because the wine is so fantastic. But I wonder about the environment you're in right now.
Sure.
I mean, how susceptible are you to that? What's your feelings on
So that's a perfectly fine question, and it's an obvious question, and we get it every time. We're very, look, Giorgi lives in Ukraine, I go to Ukraine all the time, and I go there for war stuff.
So there's still over 30 million people living in Ukraine.
Yeah. Life goes on, business goes on. If everybody stopped everything they were doing because of the war, the whole country would have collapsed 3 years ago. The country's resilience is in its ability to go on and continue. So, yeah, is it affected by the war? Absolutely. Everything is affected by the war. There's no one in Ukraine that isn't affected by the war. In fact, numerous countries from all over the world are being affected by the war, whether they know it or not. The first question we get is, how far is SHABO from the ground combat? And that's quite a ways. So several hours drive, more than 100 miles, about 120 miles. So the ground combat, it was a lot closer in 2022 before the Kherson counteroffensive pushed the Russians back across the river. And SHABO played a little part in helping the city on the front, Mykolaiv, that stopped the assault, do that. And we'll get to that later. But the ground fighting is not an issue. As I'm sure you see in the news, Odessa gets hit almost every day. Odessa is, a bit north of SHABO, but the village of SHABO and the winery are in 2024, I guess since the beginning of 2024, 7, Shahid 136.
2024, 7. Since this year, 4.
Yeah, okay. 7 in 2024, 4 so far this year. Shahid 136 attack drones, big attack drones that got about 120 on board at it, or missiles have been shot down or crashed on SHABO's property. The important thing, nobody seriously injured or killed. You can fix broken windows, you can replant vines. You've lost, what, 80 acres?
So 10 hectares of
Plus acres.
Very sure.
40 acres, something, of grapes.
Yes.
Yeah, 48 acres of grapes have been destroyed by Russian missiles and drones. But when you have 3,300 acres, as long as they don't hit the 1972 Telti-Kurk lines, it's okay. You can replant. There are 1972 Telti-Kurk lines. It's ridiculous.
1978 Cabernet as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, the war does affect it. It makes logistics more difficult for us. We can't sail out of the port of Odessa, which is a giant, beautiful port, because it's always under fire. So we have to move wine into the EU and then sail out of the EU.
My concern is seeing what the Soviets did the last time they were there.
Oh yeah, there's no worry about Russia taking SHABO. That's not a realistic concern. As long as the world does its part and to Some degree of military testing.
That's true. Yeah, we haven't explained the latest one. This.
No, you're good, no, no, no.
So this is Saperavi. Who's had Saperavi before? I know you have. Yes? Anybody else? Maybe Saperavi does not have it before.
This is Merlot.
Oh, this is Merlot. Oh,
Merlot Reserve.
Oh, I forgot we had Merlot.
I've had Merlot too.
Anybody not had Merlot? Reserve Merlot.
So, Reserve Merlot. So this is the wine that is, again, hand-picked. Then we go through the fermentation process in stainless steel tanks, and then we age it for 6 months in a second-year-old barrel. Again, lightly oaked. And also important, before the aging, it does go through the malolactic fermentation. What does malolactic fermentation does? It actually softens up the sharp edges of acidity in wines. So it makes it much more supple, much more fruit forward. And for me personally, this is my go-to wine if I have an empty fridge and I just want to drink. Meaning that Merlot is so soft and supple that you don't necessarily need any fruit to balance it out. It's good enough on its own right. So again, on the nose, you have a very, very light hint of vanilla and tobacco, a bit of leather. Again, that's all comes from the barrel already. There. Very supple, very soft, completely, very silky. And you have a bit of raspberry, a bit of cherry. Again, very fruit forward. And it still says it has a beautiful long aftertaste as well. Any comments?
Questions? Thoughts?
I'll grab my saber.
Yes, we got questions back here.
I had a random thought, but it was based on your conversation you're having with about the war and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna say, like Fredericksburg here, where you're at today, is historically like the Civil War was majorly fought here.
I actually took Giorgi to the Museum of the United States Army earlier today.
Okay.
And we went through the Civil War exhibit, and I pointed out Fredericksburg and the proximity between Washington and Richmond and Fredericksburg role in the war to help him understand where we were going to see.
Literally right where you're standing right now.
Yeah, they were fighting right here.
Literally. But I was gonna say, there's an island right here in the middle of the river, Fox Island, and during that time, it was like the 3rd largest winery in the state of Virginia, but they obviously got affected by war stuff. I was like, yo, it's the same thing. Like, I was just saying.
Well, that's actually a good point. There's wine history and war
Yeah.
right here.
We're not looking for any gunpowder flavors and all. Let's keep it that way. So, moving on to our final elephant, the pylon that keeps our SHABO universe at, is, as I mentioned, the importance of wine, culture of wine consumption. Again, because of the Ukrainian history, some parts of the culture were lost. So, as I mentioned, for our family, it does matter what we do. It does matter that wine brings a lot of happiness and can bring a lot of sadness due to lack of knowledge. So for this reason, we built this wine culture center that educates on the history of world winemaking, Ukrainian winemaking in depth, teaches about SHABO's winemaking, our OCD approach about winemaking, viticulture in general, because not everybody grew up in villages. Some people lived in cities all their lives, and they do think that sometimes grapes grow on trees. But that's why they like here at Vino's right at the factory, so they can see how it actually looks like.
Yeah, it's actually fascinating. So they have like rows of different grapes for training and for tours coming through,
Yeah.
right at the vineyard. They have a whole section mapped out, and one row after another of different grapes as examples, so people can understand the SHABO approach to the viticulture of the vineyard, without having to drive all the way around the vineyard to the tour in 5 hours.
So, for example, you can see the entrance to our museum. Actually, I might as well use this laser pointer. You see. So, for example, this is the entrance to the museum. So, first pillar you see is actually Georgian amphora, the one we saw, where the wine is made. That's where the wine was born on our planet. The next one is the Greek pillar. First people that started winemaking in Ukraine. Then the next one, we have the Ottoman Empire. The next one, we have the Swiss pillar, which is made in the form of a winemaking press. And then the last one, especially to any Soviet country, is the very typical Soviet architecture style, if that word fits. And the last pillar, the modern SHABO, is everything you see around you. So this is just also a small part just before you even enter the museum. So once you enter, we have several tasting rooms, old 200-year-old cellars, a museum labyrinth. We have several movie theaters, various tasting rooms. And my favorite comment that I receive from the guests from that visit our winery, and I think I mentioned the TripAdvisor, like for example in TripAdvisor in Odessa, when you see the main sites to go and visit, the first one, no argument there, Odessa Opera House,
Right.
which is regarded as the most beautiful opera house in the world. Second place, although we're not in Odessa, is our wine culture center. And the comment we got there is, it's a place where you fall in love with wine.
Oh,
There are art installations all over SHABO, made by Ukrainian artists, by Swiss artists, your art director. And by the way, I have to jump back to a note on the history of this place. That SHABO doesn't only talk about the history of the Swiss colonists that stood it up and created the winery, they still bring that into play. And SHABO has anniversary celebrations where they invite all of the descendants of the original founders of the Swiss wine colony to come to SHABO and have celebration of the wine history of their families at SHABO.
Yeah, we had an extremely, like on the side note, we had an extremely emotional, it was the 190th anniversary in 2012, since the colony was founded. And it was the first time that families of those Swiss winemakers came to SHABO when my family was already there. Because they came once before in like early 90s. And they were so depressed by what they saw, what happened to the village, it took us like 1 year of convincing them to come.
back.
And one thing that we also did, my family did, is that there was an old Swiss cemetery. It was just run down and you barely couldn't find your ancestors to pay respect to them. So it took us about 7 months working with Odessa and local archives to find all the correct cemeteries, to redo all the headstones and essentially renovate the whole cemetery for them to come. So it was
That's incredible. I didn't even know that part. So this is an art installation about that does, anybody familiar with the fountains at the Bellagio in Las Vegas that do water and light shows, different music, right?
yeah.
I'm sure you've seen it in movies. This is that about wine. And there are power jet fountains inside here that you walk in and you surround them. And the fountains go up, different music and light shows as interpretations of the fermentation process and different vintages inside here. This is what I call SHABO-glyphics, which is a language of symbols about wine culture, which Giorgi can explain.
sure. So
I see a chord stirring.
Not by accident. Because of the close heritage to Switzerland historically, thank you very much, to SHABO, we obviously also kept it in mind. It was also thank you. Also something we kept in mind, but also a happy coincidence. Long story short, we met an incredible artist and art director from Switzerland who was living in Odessa at the time, Mr. Hugo Scher, and he helped us to develop this wine museum project. What he did is also create the SHABO hieroglyphics. So, just an example of, if you can see it here, if we take these two lines. So here, if you don't see, it's mountains, cross-side legs, and 47. From the mountainous Switzerland, the settlers came to the 47th latitude on horses with carriages to plant grapes. So essentially, we can read the whole story of the winery from this language, and you can see it everywhere. Like, I mean, you don't see it here, but like all of these are small flags with every single separate logo.
Take a look at the rosé bottle at the end of this, and SHABO glyphics are on the bottom bottle. By the way, I'm sorry, I just came up with that name.
Sounds like SHABO.
You're right, I keep coming up with new names for SHABO.
So 8,000 years from now, some archaeologist is going to unearth this.
What civilization exists?
It'll be the pain in the apes by then.
Well, some ape archaeologist will be. Oh, must have been a primitive ape.
How many visitors do y'all get? Because you have a very nice like center museum
Thank you.
and stuff. How
Pre-invasion.
Pre-invasion, up to 70,000 visitors. Considering the fact that we are an hour and a half away from the nearest biggest city. So, but on average, it's about 50,000 visitors. Obviously, with war, it's almost stopped. Yeah.
But not none. We actually, and we have had people who have come to these tastings with Giorgi and I in the United States who have then immediately gone to Ukraine and gone to SHABO. It's happened multiple times now. It's not an outlier. We have someone going tomorrow. So he's with his fiance and going, what time? 3 p.m.?
3 p.m. and their dog as well.
And the dog. So we do provide tour guide services for those with brave of heart who want to visit wine in more time.
Yeah, I mean, if we, just coming back to the map, sure, we just.
It's not a business. That's just when people are really that interested.
If you're really interested, quick side note on how you can do it. So, you travel to Moldova, to the capital of Chisinau, after which you spend the night there, you take your rest. In the morning, we pick you up, we drive you to SHABO, which is just 25 miles away from the border of Moldova. Another security benefit for us, because Russians are not so...
They're terrified today.
Another country. Yeah. We spend the whole day at the winery, which has minus 10 meters, basements, bomb shelters, whatever you want to call it, but essentially we're all set. There's enough wine, enough good food, so we can spend some time there. We do the whole tour, the visit, and in the evening we go back to Moldova and fly to the next destination. This is the mechanics we'll be using with our non-military porters and our guests since the full-scale invasion.
This is the Sapravi.
So yes, so this is Saparavi. Saparavi is a traditionally Georgian grape, but this is planted and grown in Ukraine on the estate. The name Saparavi, anybody know what the name Saparavi means who has not been here before or owns a wine shop?
So basically, you're asking like two people.
I have no idea.
It literally means the one that gives color. So if you swirl this in your glass, watch it stain the sides of your glass red.
And your teeth.
And your teeth. That's the next line. And your hand if you do that. But it is. This is one of the only grapes you cannot make white wine from. Most red wine comes from skin contact. This It doesn't matter, the fruit itself is pink.
Tenture.
What?
Tenture.
Yes,
That
she knows the actual.
the words she just said.
Yes.
It is a tenture.
Tenture.
Meaning that the,
Whippy. Yes.
meaning that the inside is pink already, so
Yeah.
you can squish it and make it a white wine.
You told me that last time, and then I wanted to tell to Giorgi, but I couldn't remember what you said, so.
So Sapra is one of my personal favorites. This is the wine I definitely recommend with a meal next to it. Specifically barbecue, my personal choices would be barbecue of lamb or beef. But my personal would be lamb.
So that's why we did a Euro pizza for tonight.
Ah, okay, so perfect fit. So beautiful pronounced blackcurrant, violet, a bit of raspberry. It's jammy, but I understand now that I think in America when people say jammy, they mean a bit more sweeter side. What I mean by jammy is the density, meaning that you can almost bite into it. It feels so full-bodied. Beautiful tannins, powerful, but again, please note, they are not green. You don't have any green vegetable notes in the palate. And it's again not overripe. You don't have any unbalanced like sugared sweet cherry in that. That means they missed the harvest date and collected it too late. On the nose, you have a bit of raspberry and a bit of like eucalyptus, mint, like fresh herb notes as well to it. So yeah, Sapra is definitely one of our front runners in our portfolio in America, and this is something I would definitely recommend as a gastronomical wine for
It's the alcohol.
Well, 5.
sure. Should be around up to 13 here.
Ray, what is the alcohol on this one?
12?
12.
Lower than.
But it feels like 13.
I'm drinking pot.
Here in Virginia, you could say 12, and it's plus or minus 1.5%, I think it is.
Really?
For the
Yeah.
ABC.
Oh, interesting.
Still better than, we're still fighting with it because in Ukraine to this very day, you're not allowed to put a full-on concrete alcohol level on the bottle. We do it anyway, we just pay like small fines every month. But in Ukraine, because it's still the leftovers from the Soviet Union, you put the whole range. You put like from 10 to 14, like 8 to 12. Like, so yeah, if we move forward, it's the last, on the final stretch. We understand that unfortunately Ukraine is not well known in the world of winemaking, so we need to put extra effort to put Ukraine on the world wine map. Because trust me, any normal winemaker, if he was in like California or Italy or France, he would be ecstatic with 10 medals from any of these competitions we participate in. We take it a bit slightly to the next level, we're 600. Only top tier international awards, we do not participate in anything local or regional. We're the first winery ever from Ukraine to receive 97 points from the Counter Wine Awards, which is like Oscars from wine in London. 95 points from Jancis Robinson, from James Suckling, top 10 of the best sparklings of the world, top 10 of the best Cabernet Sauvignons in the
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
let's
world.
take the time till a moment to do that, because that's because we're getting into Cabernet next.
Ah, okay. I can go through other medals and we go back like that.
Limited edition.
Did you add the Cabernet in a, what is that?
It's a vase.
It is a
It
Rita.
works, that's the important part.
It's a Rita branded decanter.
Oh my gosh, can we get a picture of
It's
this?
what?
I'm sorry, it's a,
It's a Rita.
This is wine history right here.
Here in Fredericksburg.
There we go.
I don't know.
I think it's awesome.
It's a wine store. You'd think you'd have a real decanter.
Bring out a dusty one.
Let's-
Really use.
Let's find out if it pours.
That was the one. That pours very well. I'm impressed.
We all
Oh my God.
Bravo, Rita.
Rita has years of academy training when it comes to pouring wine.
Sir, I was gonna say, like, you guys have this like whole museum complex. You're talking about your legacy, you're talking about your story and all this stuff, and how you like the war is kind of putting a real damper on your ability to like communicate that to the world and stuff like
It's,
that. So, like, where's your Netflix documentary?
Where's that?
Your Netflix
Ah,
documentary, or like
Hey.
a book, or a book.
We are working on stuff like that. We are, we're working on how to spread this to the world. But part of that is, as we come to the United States, is all of you. You know, please rate these on Vino. Please tell people. Please share this on social media. We are just building this in the United States. Literally, look, because our mission is wine diplomacy for Ukraine, both for the country and for the wine production in that country.
And tell people they can only get it at City Vino.
We are. We started with distribution. Our first distribution location is Washington, D.C., Virginia, and Maryland, right? Because that's the community.
That's what it is.
The people who have influence over changing how the world sees this
Yep.
live in those communities, right? And so that we started here. Our first brand ambassador, if anybody I don't know if anybody follows politics of the war here,
Hey.
but our first brand ambassador is Ambassador Kurt Volker, former U.S. ambassador to NATO and U.S. Special Representative to Ukraine, he's a two-time ambassador. So we call him our brand ambassador. And he actually has a 10-year love affair with SHABO from before the war. And has known Giorgi for a long time. So when he found out Giorgi was coming to the U.S. and the mission and what we're doing, he was all in. But this is the first market we entered. We just started our second one in Colorado, and that's already going crazy too. And just so you know, like this is catching fire quickly. But we need everybody. We need help. You know, as you said, the war has muted the ability to get the word out. It's killed the tourism mostly. But you know, if afterwards, if you have questions about that, let us know. We're happy to share other ways to get the word.
Yep. So, a little story, it's Cabernet Merlot.
This is Cabernet. So this is Grand Reserve again, like that last Celtic Coda.
This is the limited edition.
Oh, I forgot we had that.
Oh, okay, so it's Sapporo Merlot.
So it's not Robert Ellis.
Okay.
They're getting all their wines.
We do a lot of wines. Rita, I think you do more wines in a tasting with SHABO than anybody else. And I love it. It's really, really, really awesome. I just need to remember to have a tasting sheet up here.
I'm sorry. Yes.
The rubric, you got check all the boxes.
Right, yeah.
And rubric.
I can pick the little glass and, you know, click through.
So this is how the bottle looks like. So Sapporo Merlot. It's a Georgian style wine, meaning that it's made in the amphora. That's very neck deep underground. As I mentioned, there's amphoras why they're very neck deep underground because they keep the same temperature and humidity with 1 degree variation all through the year. So you can keep it for winemaking processes or also for storage. And it was very common in every single Georgian house, like even my grandmother had them, and because the neck is so small, they can only rope down children to wash it. The common trick my grandmother used to do is she made me sing while I was inside there, because once I started to slur my words, it's time for me for some fresh air.
That's why he is the way he is.
How often can those be reused before they have to be replaced?
My grandmother had ones that were up to 60 years old and they were fine.
Yeah.
The main danger here is, first of all, the most difficult for this winemaking technique is to keep microbiology, to keep it super clean.
Yeah.
But now, instead of children, we have pressure washers.
Yeah.
That is until I bring my children to Ukraine and we lower them.
Well, children got to learn how to have responsibility. That's all I'm saying.
And the second danger is during installation or servicing, or God forbid, if you're in earthquake prominent region, it might crack. So since we installed this in SHABO in 2017, so out of 30 total amphoras that we have now, we have 2 that are, one got cracked during transportation and one during usage.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, think of these giant clay vessels going on like a 1,000-mile road journey.
They are 2,000 liter
Yeah.
size.
Right. And one bad bump in the road, one tiny imperfection or air bubble, and
Yeah.
it's done, right?
There's no cement, there's no patching it up with more clay.
Yeah, right.
There is cement on the outside for the transportation.
Oh, they put it in cement during transportation?
Yeah, just on the outside, as we saw in the picture.
Oh, okay, got it. But when they're buried in the ground, to stabilize them in the ground, they bury them down to the neck in the ground, and then at SHABO they cement around the area to stabilize the necks and hold them in place, and also to provide a good surface to walk over.
Is the temperature like 50s or so, as far as what temperature do they stay at under the ground? Is there certain?
In terms of variation, in Fahrenheit, it will be around 62.5 more, give or take. During the fermentation process, of course, it goes higher and lower for sure, but for the most part of the year, it's about 19, 20 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
And you don't want to get too warm, right?
No, and that's why they're buried in the ground. It maintains perfect humidity, and again, this is 6,000-year-old technology. But that's how 6,000 years ago they maintained perfect temperature and humidity throughout the year by having them buried.
So, what does this technique makes to the wine? It changes its profile. I usually use the term it makes the wine rustic, more characterful, more playful. In this case, this is Saperavi Merlot blend. So we have 60% of Merlot and 40% of Saperavi, which in turn, because Saperavi is such a powerful grape variety, so we have to use a bit less because otherwise we will overpower all of this blend. So this one again is one of the gastronomical wines I would definitely recommend. So you have your beautiful blueberry notes, it's very well pronounced tannins, but again, still very subtle because how this wine is made, you put the whole grape bunch inside. After the fermentation process is finished, you
Stems and everything.
Yep. After the fermentation process is finished, you leave it on, if you use technical, post-fermentation maceration. So essentially, you leave the skin with the grape juice for 4 or 5 months, up to 6 in this case, in our style. What it does in return helps you develop more flavor, more aroma, and because also importantly, the amphoras are made with clay. Clay is a porous material. It gives little micro-oxidation, which helps you develop in turn even more flavor. But you have to be cautious not to turn it into vinegar.
I'll walk around and show you guys what this looks like after the wine has been extracted.
Yeah.
Inside, I took this photo inside an amphora at SHABO. So that's the mash that's left behind after the wine is sucked out before the amphora is cleaned. Go.
It's still bright when you showed it to us, yeah.
We did one of those kind of experiments as well.
Isn't that
We had
crazy?
a product 10 years
Have
ago,
you seen
which was called wine sorbet.
I took that photo.
which was a special recipe for wine.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, yeah, this is real. Like, we went right after the wine had been extracted.
And you did
And
like
I
this.
was, and we were.
I got a box.
I got it. I'll walk you through. I need to send you all catalog of
We
photos.
do make grappa,
Okay.
but we make it much more pure. Grappa is made from leftovers, and we make from like Fredericksburg style, like from wine juice.
Wait,
So-
you just mentioned grappa.
So they don't make their own. They make proper grape vodka.
Gotcha.
No, he was just explaining the difference.
Yeah, so there are many drinks that are made, beverages that are made from in grappa style. Grappa, chacha in Georgia, rakia in Turkey or Bulgaria or Cyprus. So what it is when you make wine, so you press the grapes, the must is left. So the first juice went to the wine, and whatever is left over, we press it again, and that's what is grappa and chacha actually means, the leftovers of wine making. You distill it several times and you get a grape spirit. Now, because it's made from leftovers, grappa traditionally is quite oily, it's very heavy, it's, you can feel it the next morning, long story short. I'm just trying to be diplomatic. Now, how we make it. Instead of using the leftovers, we actually we use the first juice, the highest quality, the purest that goes to the wine. And we distill it 5 times, and then depending on the style, it goes through the bottle or through some light barrel aging as well. And that's why we call it grape vodka, it's just for pure marketing reasons. If you want to get technical, the technical name of that beverage is actually French, and it's called eau de vie, water of life. Now, if you take that water of life, you put it in the barrel for 3 years, and you just happen to live in the village of Cognac in France, in 3 years you're going to have Cognac. So that's what it is.
Okay.
And actually I have full-on highest quality distilled grape juice that is not aged.
Gotcha. Okay. I was wondering what that was now, isn't it?
So,
Yes.
we're working.
Read
Also,
it.
importantly, I also want to mention, because it's also becoming, when you make white grapes in amphora,
Oh, yeah.
they actually, because of the contact from clay, because of the porousness of the amphora itself, it will come up orange color.
It makes a white wine orange. Look orange.
So when you hear, for the most part, I know in America it's something different.
Yeah. There are orange wines in America that are not from this. Right? This is a different thing. So we generally call these amber wines. But
Amber wine, orange wines, it's all marketing terms to describe this.
But this is what Teltikura looks like when it comes out of an amphora. And we're hoping to add that in this market in the coming year.
I would enjoy that.
It's the only white wines in the world that have tannins. It's really, really interesting.
Okay.
Very unusual. It's going to be a love or hate relationship, I'm going to tell you now. Be warned.
That's going on this year.
Well, we're working, that's one of the ones I want to ask our distributor to pick up. Normally, when a distributor picks up a new imported wine from a place that nobody knows, they'll like start with like 4 wines, and you know, they'll get like you know, a pallet worth, because the importer has to bring it to distributors in different markets. Our distributor in this area now has 24 of our wines after 3 months. It's taking up a significant chunk of the warehouse, but it moves. In the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, we've gone through 650 cases in 20 years. Yes. We're going through now like 50 to 70 cases.
It is interesting, when we get visitors from DC, they ask two things. They ask, do we have a pet nat?
No.
And then they ask, do you have orange wine? And if that code says not yes, they walk out the door. It's really interesting.
Really?
Yeah,
That's fascinating.
it is hysterical to me. So
Very,
yes,
very,
please,
very fashionable.
very fashionable. Yes.
So America's
Well,
so-
tell Travis, tell Travis that.
I have,
Okay.
not that one yet, but I have influenced Travis in other wines to get.
No, tell him that one. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because even we were unsure at first what the reaction would be, but that's.
And we have a whole section of orange wine in the back.
You introduced us to the orange one.
Yeah, we had like.
Any more questions with the flavor process? Before we get into another grand reserve? By the way, I've learned from doing tastings here, again, because of the wonderful variety that, of wines that Rita brings in. We Ubered down here today.
I mean, you can offer us wines, but
Say I'm from here, easy.
No, I live in Woodbridge actually, and Giorgi is staying in Alexandria.
So, I want to share with you a story that will put our wines in more perspective, I guess, and also considering the fact that the wine we're trying now is a Bordeaux blend of Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, but it's obviously Cabernet dominant. 82% of Cabernet Sauvignon. Barrel fermented, barrel aged for 10 months. But I want to share the story of one of the tastings that we got invited to, because it was only invitation only. It took place in Italy, in northern Italy, on the historical Lake Como, in Vino d'Este Hotel. The event was organized by an official association of wine critics and journalists of France and Italy together. I received a call saying, from a person saying, like, listen, like 3-4 years ago, I tried your Cabernet in one of the big international wine expos. I remembered it and I want you to invite to come to this event. Okay, no problem. So we come there, and it's a blind tasting. That's the only reason actually I agreed to do this. It was a 120-person committee that was doing this tasting. Just few highlights who was on this committee for you to understand the level of obscurity and craziness of this wine tasting. So it was Mr. Alvarez, the owner of Vega Sicilia, which is the top top Spanish Ribera wine producer. Maria Gaia from the Gaia family from Italy. Head winemaker of Dom Perignon. Mr. Aubert de Villaine, the owner of DRC, the Monero Nickel, which is the most expensive wines in the world. All of this 120-person committee was headed by Prince Albert II of Monaco. So in this very surreal group of people, to put it lightly, our Cabernet came in top 5 of the best Cabernets in the world, and more importantly so, it came higher than Chateau Margaux, which cost, I'm talking like specific vintages, was at the time was 9,000 euros, sorry, 7,000 euros per bottle, and Chateau Haut-Brion, which was for 12,000 euros per bottle. So when people ask me, does Ukraine make great wines? I already have an answer. Yes.
To put that in context, that was from the height of the SHABO family collection, which is called Vaja, named after Giorgi's father. And that most expensive level of SHABO is $500 a bottle.
Why
And
aren't you
came in
charging
high.
more?
What?
Why aren't you charging more then?
Yeah.
You're competitive with
You know,
9,000 euro, 12,000
you
You
know,
know, because we're winemakers, we know that when the winemaking stops and when the marketing starts.
So, and even in the U.S., like some of our wines, like this
Grand Reserve Sparkling, we talked about 8 years in the bottle on these, 100% Chardonnay, 2016, right? And the retail price is like $65, $70 on that. And people go crazy, you know, master somms are like, why is that price? And we think, because that's a good price to sell it at, and it's a great value. And it's been crazy. And this actually became the first SHABO wine picked up by a Michelin star restaurant in the United States, in Washington, D.C., Imperfecto by Enrique Lamarda a couple months ago. Because everybody tries it, goes, that's inappropriately priced. So we go, yeah, so you should buy it.
So at the moment, until we go really big, you still have an upper hand of having a hidden gem, if I may say so. Because I'll give you my personal example. In 2007 or 8, oh sorry, 6. 2006 and 7, I was studying for my master's in Madrid, out of all places, and it was a beautiful, tiny market, right? Literally like 5 meters from my entrance. And it had the tiniest wine shop, literally not bigger than probably from this wall to wall. And this was obviously a very proud Spanishman that was originally from Ribera del Duero and only selling, and the wines were up to the ceiling, only selling the wines from this region. And I still remember discovering the region for myself for the first time and buying wines that are 20, 25 euros. That's worse for like special occasion if I go to visit. If somebody invites me to their house, I was a student, so for myself it was like 8, 10 euros. And like incredible wines. In the last 20 years, for me, unfortunately, that region became more and more well known. And those very wines that I was buying for 20 euros, for 25, now have an expert zero at that. So, yeah, something to consider and figure out.
So now we have a Grand Reserve Cabernet Merlot. This is 82% Cabernet, 18% Merlot. This is that same Grand Reserve process, except unlike the Celtic Purok you had earlier, this isn't fermented in those 228 liter barrels. This is fermented in those 5,000 liter temperature controlled Taransac French oak tanks that you saw in the red fine wines section. So this is fermented in those, then goes through malolactic fermentation, then goes into aging for a year in mostly new French oak with a little bit of secondary oak. Again, to manage the very delicate oak integration into the wine. This is the other wine that is currently sold and exhibited at the Bordeaux Wine Museum. This is
And coming to the end of our presentation, so yeah, we already mentioned of our highlights. We already had a question about the war. Actually, one of them there was about the example of Nikolaev.
Yes. Actually, if you want to go back to the slide real quick, I'll give you an example. The map.
Oh.
So, in the first months of the war, the Russians had gone up through Crimea and had gotten to about here, okay, in the Nikolaev, which Kherson is here, which is now liberated. Yeah, Kherson. Kherson is over here. Nikolaev is around here, right? And the Russians had taken Luhansk, Donetsk, part of Zaporizhia, and much of Kherson regions of Ukraine. And they were marching across. I was up here in a safe house, and the Ukrainian Navy SEALs wanted me to go down to Odessa. And I got in a big fight with some of the guys on my team. They said, because they thought Odessa was going to get taken next. Because Nikolaev was the next big city before Odessa, and the fight was on in Nikolaev. I mean, I got a really big fight. And Mykolaiv wound up being stopping the Russians when nobody thought the Russians could be stopped in their march across Ukraine. And so that's why it's called the hero city of Mykolaiv. And the city was the site of constant urban warfare for like 6 months before the Ukrainian army massed and pushed the Russians all the way back out of Kherson. But during that whole time, this entire city, what's the population?
Half of that's like 300,000-400,000.
300,000 or 400,000 people were totally cut off from what? Both the civilians in the town and the Ukrainian troops fighting to stop the Russians from taking it and pushing the west. And so there was no fresh water supply, there was no clean water.
No drinking water.
And so Giorgi stepped in.
Yeah, all of the SHABO team stepped in. So first we started sending our wine carrier trucks filled with water because we have artisanal wells right on the territory of the winery. So we picked those and we were driving back and forth every single day for 6 months period, several times a day, taking that fresh water to Mykolaiv. But now not everybody can come to those trucks and take those water for themselves. So I made the biggest thing that the winemaker can make. I actually started bottling the water. And again, to see how hectic the time was, this is not an emergency worker or my winemaker. This is actually the director of my restaurant. Boiling water by his hand with our team, and all of us for hands-on approach at every single stage. So for pensioner houses, for hospitals, for schools, etc., we were delivering directly water in the 5-liter jugs. So this is one of our many humanitarian missions that we do. I'm not hiding, we do a lot of support for the armed forces of Ukraine, but I don't like to go into specifics, so I'll be happy to share after our victory.
Yeah. Those first months were so uncertain, and this is total war. This is the first total war really in the world since World War II. And those first months, nobody knew what was next. Nobody knew what was the next day or week was going to hold. And so everybody threw in. And some in significant ways nobody could even imagine before the war. And so this gives an idea of, everybody goes, well, how did Ukraine survive that initial onslaught through efforts like this by everyone, by the whole country?
You don't hear about that on TV.
No, exactly, and that's why we share this story. And SHABO was extraordinary in this, but all of Ukraine was extraordinary in this. The whole nation stood up as one to support their neighbors and stop the
Awesome.
This is all from our side at this moment. Thank you very much for your attention, for your time. I hope it was a good discovery of Ukrainian terroir, Ukrainian wines, about the beautiful mission of SYPRT Worldwide and the whole SENS team that we're doing. And from me and from all of my team of 1,200 people, of their big families and all of the Ukrainian people, I would like to thank you personally for all the help you're doing, whether it's you as an individual citizen, because literally by buying a single bottle of the wine, you're actually supporting the families and the troops and the mining of Ukraine. And also personally for all the support that America has been already doing and still continues to do, because we have been realistic and very open about it. We wouldn't have gotten this far without him. So it gives us another wave of optimism and strength to meet another day, because we have the truth and the land on our side. So for us, it's a matter of time. Thank you.
I was going to say, Virginia, Hamilton, and Virginia and Colorado. Did everything about other states along the way?
Yeah, so I'll tell you in the next few weeks, we are launching in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Michigan, California, Kentucky, Indiana, we're probably New Jersey, and we're working on New York.
You could probably skip Indiana. I mean, there's really nothing.
You know, so funny enough, the reason Kentucky and Indiana are in there is at a trade show, this guy walked up from an importer of Georgian wine with a U.S. Marine Corps lapel pin, and above that a lapel pin with a crossed American and Georgian flag. And I went, all right, I got it. And I'm sitting there with an Air Force lapel pin and a crossed Ukrainian and American flag. And I'm going, all right, I gotta get the story behind this. And he's an American military officer who went to Georgia on a foreign assignment as a war planner, helping Georgia plan for war against Russia out of the U.S. Embassy there, and fell in love with Georgian wine and decided to become a wine importer for Georgian wines.
That story sounds familiar.
Right. Yeah. So we sat down and we talked, and I said, "And you distribute in Kentucky and Indiana?" He said, "Yeah." And we talked. I said, "You want to do Ukrainian wine?" He said, "Absolutely."
You want to do Georgian wine?
And so, we said, this is too obvious of a fit. Like he said, they do a fair amount of business in Indianapolis, in Louisville, and and they're really spreading the word about Georgian wine, and now they're going to add Ukrainian wine to that because of the mission. And so that's why those two states are on that list. They were not like high up targets, but when something like that falls into your lap and a partner that really understands it that way, you can't say no to that.
That's
right.
That's a true statement.
Yeah, it was too easy. So we're starting that. We're launching we're working on a whole bunch more states right now. West Virginia is also on the list. Wyoming is probably going to bring the wines on board. That's through the state system there. Montgomery County, Maryland is bringing the wines on board. So
there's like 12 people in Wyoming.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I went to the 17 control states in the United States, where all the alcohol, at least all the liquor, has to go through the state, and some of them all the wine does. And in Wyoming is one of those. And the head of the control organization in the Wyoming government came up to me I was looking at our stuff. I said, I said, would you like to try some new wine? I bet you've never had Ukrainian wine. And he looked at me, he said, you bet wrong, son. I went, this was a few weeks ago. This is since the last time I was like, and I said, really? I said, where did you try Ukrainian wine? He said, in Ukraine. And I said, when were you in Ukraine? I said, what brought you to Ukraine? He said, wine. And I went, what? He said, I made a wine pilgrimage to Ukraine in 2003. And I went all over Crimea to Ukrainian wineries and learned the beauty and incredible history of Ukrainian wine. I said, what? The one person that I've run into like this is the head of alcohol in Wyoming? And I said, okay. And we tasted wine, we talked for a long time, so now Wyoming's probably going to have trouble pretty soon.
That is awesome.
This was the head of alcohol in the Wyoming government's organization.
Oh, right.
Did the wine pilgrimage too. Great.
The mission that Sam and his wonderful team are doing, and it's definitely not me and Sam saying this, because never worked in America beforehand, this full potential, not involved in alcohol, but we have a wonderful sales director.
Joe Belli, who you'll probably meet down here sometime when he's in town if you come to more events here, is prior Marine Corps combat engineer, D. Minor, who from the 90s, who has spent the last 25 years in the alcohol industry. And he's our national sales manager, who came aboard and immediately went to Ukraine, went to SHABO.
And he calls everything that is happening in America, and it really isn't. I'm afraid to say anything every single day to not to jinx it, but it's so serendipitous. Everything that's happening and how, like from the meeting that Sam described, this is just the tip of the iceberg what has been happening in the last 2 or 3 years.
Well, that's awesome.
So, but thank you again for your help, for your time.
One last lesson. Cheers in Ukrainian is budmo.
Budmo.
Budmo. B-U-D-M-O. Budmo.
Budmo.
Very good. Cheers.
Before we finish our.
Yes,
Thank you so much, gents.
we have so little material.
I so appreciate your time and your willingness to come to Fredericksburg and bless my small crowd with your knowledge and your regale of stories and all. To you, we have plenty of bottles over there. If you enjoyed anything and everything that we've consumed this evening, please buy something. Would you be willing to sign some bottles as?
Oh, of course. I do write like a doctor, so I do apologize. It's not even, I love how these jokes translate in any languages.
We have a trend. We've been having wonderful winemakers come and sign bottles with us, and it's fun stories to share.
Sure. Yeah, I do remember.
We've met you.
It was my honor.
And one last.
Spread and
No, go ahead.
and I've shared some time with you to get to know you because selling bottles of wine is like selling friends. It's just a friend.
Yeah, put a face to it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's personal that I've met you.
And one last note on the mission. So with our demining partners, it's not like some performative, oh, we give a percentage of sales to the mission, and they won't ever say what it is because it's 0.5% or 1% or something. 15% of all our profits goes directly to the deminers. We work directly with them. We got them out of the minefields a couple months ago to take them to SHABO and have them spend days drinking ridiculous wine at SHABO. They want me to come and clear some minds with them on my next trip over. We'll see. My wife has some feelings about that. But it is, it really does contribute to the issue.
All right.